Is it going good?
Okay, so we just need to get you out of there and back in real quick. 'Cause it's not.
Okay, we're going to get going. If you want to grab your seat, grab your coffee or whatever you got going, and we'll jump right into Hebraisms tonight. We're going to hit three major Hebraisms tonight, and then second hour we're going to talk about a current thing that's going on in grocery stores, about surveillance and your prices are changing. We're going to be talking about that as far as. They have decided to use AI in determining your costs for things, and that cost will be sometimes different based on who you are, where you're located, how far you are from the. Yeah, so a lot of weird stuff happening as far as pricing is concerned. I think you need to be aware of it. I think it's more of a AI control systems, and the grocery stores are chomping at the bit to run these things. And now we'll talk a lot more about that. But again, it's more of a system that's being set up through AI. And the significance of it plays into the future, obviously. So we'll talk more about that second hour. Next week, I am gone. So we're no Bible study till next week. I have to be back in Oklahoma for a funeral. So I'll be gone. But then the following Wednesday, we will still resume. So I don't know what date that is, like the 17th or something like that. Is that the 17th? So next week, the 10th will be canceled. I'm in Oklahoma. I'll be back. I'll be back Thursday night, actually. So I'll be back before Sunday. So we'll skip 1 week and then resume on the 17th, and then on the 17th we'll stop for Christmas break and resume sometime in January. I got to go to Australia in January, so it will start back up after I get back from Australia, which is like mid-January, somewhere in that neighborhood, I think. Okay, let's start with a word of prayer. Father, thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to get together and study. And Father, these Hebraisms bring us so much enlightenment to understand your scriptures. We thank you for that. Thank you for the Jewish background. And so, Lord, as we study tonight, help us to apply it, live it out before you, and so that we can be obedient to it. Bless this time now, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so the first big one I want to handle is, and you hear me all the time use it, I always use the term remnant, whether I'm referring to the remnant of Israel or I'm referring to the remnant of the church. I want to start with the doctrine of the remnant, and where it starts first becoming abundantly clear that Isaiah is picking up this theme. It actually comes from Elijah, the prophet. Elijah got down to the point where he thought he was the only one left. And God says, no, I have reserved 7,000 that haven't bowed a knee to Baal. And that's where really the doctrine was created, in that event, in that situation when he went to Mount Sinai and was thinking he was all alone. But then from that point, Isaiah picks up the theme and he develops the theme in doctrine form in the book of Isaiah, and that's obviously carried into the first century. It's carried into the epistles. The Apostle Paul will deal with the remnant of Israel and explain in chapters 9 through 10 how Israel stands into the future. And this is very important, I think, for all of us to get this. And if you're dealing with people, Christians that have replacement theology or what we call supersessionism, it's because they don't understand the fundamental doctrine of the remnant of Israel. They understand how it applies, and hopefully tonight it'll make sense to you, and you will sit there and scratch your head hopefully afterwards and say, I don't understand where replacement theology comes from. Well, I think I do know. It comes from anti-Semitism. That's where it comes from. And so when I looked at the development of replacement theology, where the church replaces Israel, that's their thought. It developed early on in church history when the church broke away from its Jewish roots. The minute it broke away from its Jewish roots, it created what we call replacement theology. The church's new Israel. Israel's done and gone. They're finished. And it's like, dude, there's no way you could have come up with that reading the scriptures. There's just no way. And especially when you're reading Romans chapter 9 through 10 through 11. So I want to take you through for the origins of it, and then take you through to current events till this day, and then we'll hit some other ones that are significant in referring to the Messiah. So Isaiah 10 talks about it. And it shall come to pass in that day that the remnant of Israel, and then there's your word, right? Such as have escaped of the house of Jacob will never again depend on him who defeated them, but will depend on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel, in truth. The remnant will return, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty God. For though your people, O Israel, will be as the sand of the sea, a remnant of them will return. And that's where we get the word remnant, or the concept of the remnant, or the doctrine of the remnant, is Isaiah encapsulating and saying, look, I'm going to use a smaller portion of the nation that's going to be the believing element that I'm going to use. Where we get the concept of the remnant, it actually comes from a garment. So if you have like a garment and clothing, garments, blankets, anything back in that day, it's extremely valuable to have clothing. Usually had one set of clothing if you're an average Israeli, and it was very, very valuable, your cloak and any piece of clothing. That's why you see even the Roman soldiers gambling for Jesus' clothes, and especially the tunic that he had. You're like, who cares about, someone's clothes? In our day and time, it's like, what's the big deal? Clothing was very valuable, was very hard to get. And back even in Isaiah's day, in the 700 BC's time, clothing was very valuable. So even if you had a piece of cloth, that was valuable. And so the concept of the remnant comes from Israel being considered a piece of cloth, and the remnant being a torn piece of that still exists. And so even the smaller element, if you had a piece of cloth, was very, very valuable to you. And again, that carried into the first century with the Roman soldiers even seeing that as well. Couple nuances, though, it carries. The remnant, because it's a piece of cloth, is the same fabric. It's not a different fabric. It's not a sewn-on fabric. It's a piece that's torn off. And because it's the same fabric, where if you just push the idea, it carries the same identity. And that's really important, because Paul will carry this concept that the remnant is the identity of Israel. That small piece constitutes the identity among the unbelieving element of Israel. It's the same thread, same pattern, same material of the original. So when Israel was constituted as a nation, under Moses they were constituted as a nation, but they were called as a nation from Abraham. Well, the remnant represents that lineage all the way back to believing Moses, to believing Abraham. It's the believing element of the nation that God created. It's definitely smaller. There's no doubt about that. It's always going to be smaller because it's a torn piece off the original cloth. The original cloth, if consider it like a bed sheet or like a blanket that you would have, and so you would have a smaller cut in of the edge, and that's what constitutes the remnant. Just because it's smaller doesn't mean it's inferior, and so you don't want that mindset either. It's simply that the smaller portion remains after the original garment has either been lost or corrupted, or something's happened to the original cloth. In the case of Israel, what's happened is the majority of Israel is not in belief, and that's historically true all the way to this day. There is a remnant that exists today of Israel. They're the believing element. We call them Messianic Jews, and I'll get to that in just a bit. But that's how it's always been. Even with Moses, when they were constituted as a nation under Moses, it was always a smaller element that believed. The larger portion did not, even though they were allowed to continue to exist as a nation and go in. And sometimes that believing element got really, really, really small, really small. Anyway, it's always the minority. Always. It's always the minority. And what we know in Scripture, and you know this too, the majority is always wrong. Always. It's the minority that's always right, because it's the minority that follows God and stays to His Word, follows His Word, and is in line with His Word. So, that's the old saying, the majority is always wrong. That's not only true for politics, that's not only true for, social issues or whatever issue, or even in the church, the majority is always wrong. It's a smaller minority that's typically the ones that get it, that understand it, and that's true even in Israel's day. And even in Isaiah 10, it says, though Israel is as the sand of the sea, which was a reference back to the Abrahamic covenant, I'll make your descendants as the sand of the sea, it is only this small portion that actually believes. So the nation of Israel might be biologically connected to Abraham and Jewish, but this believing element is not only connected biologically, but they are spiritually connected by believing, if that makes sense. They have a twofold aspect. They have a genetic and they have a spiritual genetics to Abraham. That's how that works with Israel. The remnant depends on God alone. They don't trust in foreign dignitaries. They don't trust in foreign governments. They trust in God alone. So when you're studying your Bible and you're going through your Old Testament and you're reading about Israel, anytime you see them, like a king makes a deal with with Egypt, or a king makes a deal with this group or that group, that's the non-believing element of Israel that's doing that. The believing element will always stay faithful to God and never depart and make crazy alliances and do stupid things. And even in the future, the remnant of Israel will not make a deal with the devil. It will be the many that make a deal with the Antichrist, not the few, which constitutes the remnant. And the remnant at that point will be, the 144,000, and that starts the tribulation period. We'll get to that in just a bit. They always depend on God. They always trust God. So that's the element that's always faithful to God. So then when you jump into the New Testament, what you have going on is Paul is dealing with the question, okay, what happened to Israel? But since Israel has rejected their king and the church started, the natural question of the Jewish people there were, well, how does Israel still fit into this whole paradigm? And so Paul takes Romans 9 through 11 to explain this. And that's really the magnum opus of Paul on dealing with Israel. And that's the clincher, that if anybody is believing in replacement theology, just have them read Romans 9 through 11 and realize what Paul is trying to say. He'll define the remnant this way, that not all of Israel is Israel. And he's not saying they're not biologically, he's saying they're not part of the believing element. And so this remnant, he says, then is preserved by God, because this is the believing aspect, and therefore they are preserved by God, just like you are preserved by God. Once you become a believer, you're preserved by God. You can never lose your salvation. You're protected from the enemy. Satan cannot physically kill you. That's the protection, unless you get church disciplined. And so there's a preservation element even in the church with the church's remnant, and there's a preservation element going on with the remnant of Israel as well, even to this day. So like, for instance, there's about 30,000 Messianic Jews in Israel today. I don't know how many Messianic Jews are here in the United States, but, 30,000, that's it. That's it. And I can't remember the last stats I saw on how many Jews are in Israel. If someone can look that up on their phone, let me know. But it's in the millions, okay? So it's like, I don't know, I want to say 9 million, 8 million. Is it almost 10? What is it? Take the Arabs out. Take the Arabs out. How many? They don't count. They don't count. As far as what Jews, they don't count as far as being considered Jews. So you're what, 8, 9 million, something like that? Or is it 10? 5 or 6? What's your phone say? I know you guys got your phones. What's your phone say? I know Google's not always right. We should be able to pick it up. How much? 7.1 million. Okay, so think about this, guys. You have 7.1 million Jews in the land of Israel, and only 30,000 of them are considered remnant believers. 30,000. That's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of figures that when Elijah was, he had left because he was running from Jezebel. Remember that. After he killed all the prophets of Baal, he runs from Jezebel and he goes back to Mount Sinai in Arabia. And he's there alone. He thinks he's the only one left, and God says there's 7,000. Okay, 7,000 is not a lot of people. But God is saying that's the remnant that constitutes Israel today, Elijah. So that wasn't a lot of people. So now you move it to today, and you have about 30,000 in Israel. Again, I don't know how many Messianic believers are here in America, but I want you to see that perspective, that the remnant is really, really small, really small. But it is through that remnant that God works. We're at Christmas time. You'll see in the Christmas story, in the Gospels, that these remnant believers are in full knowledge and expectation that the Messiah is on his way. So whether that's Simeon or Anna, how come both Simeon and Anna totally knew the signs of the times and that Messiah should be showing up at any point in time? But yet the rest of the Israel's leaders didn't, because Simeon and Anna represent the remnant. The remnant always knows what time it is. And that is true for the church. The remnant always knows what time it is because they have discernment of the signs of the times. Again, that's what Jesus went after the Pharisees, because you don't know the signs of the time. You can change, the weather, but you don't know the signs of the times. Yet the Jewish remnant did that we existed. Again, it's always been small. It's always been small. But again, they represent that believing element that always is there, and God preserves them. God keeps them protected in many ways because they're so small. Anyway, let's see, it's prophetic importance. Let's go to this. So this explains how Israel survives today. There's no doubt Israel survives because of God's hand. When you go up to and talk to any Jewish person, you got to tell them you're a living miracle. The fact that you're here on this planet and you have made it through the pogroms, and you've made it through the Inquisitions, and you made it through the Crusades, and you made it through the Holocaust, and you've made it for thousands of years, and there's no such thing as a Philistine or a Jebusite or anything like that. You are a walking miracle. But to be more theologically specific, it is the remnant of Israel that preserves the entire nation of Israel. That's how you have to understand it. And that's what keeps the continuity of the promises that are made to Abraham. Okay? So it's that believing element that keeps everything going, right? Okay? This also explains Israel's partial blindness. So when you go into Romans 9 through 11, Paul will be discussing that Israel is partially blinded. Okay? Now please, when you read this, do not read it from a Calvinist standpoint and say, well, God blinded them on purpose, and that's why a lot of them can't believe. No. You don't know, that's not what he's saying. You have to understand spiritual blindness. You spiritually blind yourself, and how do you do that? Because you don't believe. So when you don't believe, you go spiritually blind. That's the penalty for not believing. You're not just left neutral. You go blind when you suppress the truth. Okay, so when Paul says that Israel is partially blind, the reason they're partially blinded, and they blinded themselves through unbelief, is because there's still a remnant that still sees. And so they're not fully blinded, they're only partially blinded because the remnant still believes in the Messiah, they still spiritually see. That's where the idea of partial blindness has to come in. It does not have to do with judicial blindness, that God just blinds them as they are. That's ridiculous. That would be penalizing somebody for no apparent reason, just arbitrarily, which Calvinist does. But when you read the text and you understand the whole pattern of spiritual blindness all through the Bible, people spiritually blind themselves, and that's how they get into that state. So anyway, again, the majority of Jews reject the Messiah, but there's a small remnant that accepts him. Okay, so it guarantees Israel's national survival, and it guarantees the promises that are made to Abraham are still valid. Okay, and ensures for the future Israel's national salvation. That's what Paul is trying to say. Because he will say in Romans chapter 11 that all Israel will be saved in the future. I don't know how replacement theology deals with that, unless you want to read into that Israel doesn't mean Israel. But hermeneutically, anytime you see the word Israel, it is referring to the ethnic descendants of Abraham. And so Paul is stating that's why there is a future plan for them. They will come to faith in that. Okay, so then what you have to do is when you see that all Israel will be saved, you have to know your little bit of eschatology and when that happens. Well, it's not happening right now, but in the future, here's what will happen. In the future, Israel will go into the tribulation called Jacob's trouble. They will be put into the vice grip of it. The many of Israel will make a covenant with Antichrist, but the remnant will not. The remnant, after we're gone, will constitute, first of all, the two witnesses, and that might be a return of Moses and Enoch or Elijah. So they're part of the remnant of Israel, but they're coming back. And if they are coming back, they will be killed by the Antichrist. So Moses will die twice, or Elijah will die twice, or Enoch, who was translated, will die. So they represent the remnant of Israel. And then the 144,000 represent the first fruits of Israel. And that will initially happen right after we're raptured. That will start happening. And that becomes the remnant that goes into the rest of the time. Okay, so then what happens? So during the tribulation, Antichrist turns on the Jews and decides he's going to wipe them all out according to Satan's plan. And he's very successful, and he wipes out 2/3 of them physically, kills them. So the 1/3 is left. Okay, so here's what you have to do. When Paul says all, you have to balance that out hermeneutically with your other passages. And the other passages, if you go to Isaiah, he's saying there's a smaller remnant. And yet Paul's saying all. And then I go to Zechariah 13, and it's saying, well, what constitutes Israel will be 1/3 of them. And so when you put it all together, Isaiah, Zechariah, and Paul, what you end up concluding is this, that the remnant of Israel will be 1/3 of Israel after Antichrist is done with them, and that 1/3 that remains alive is all of Israel at that time, if that makes sense, if you follow that. So you have to put all three passages together, so the remnant eventually becomes all of Israel, because the rest of the unbelieving Israel is completely slaughtered by the Antichrist. There is no unbelieving element of Israel after Antichrist slaughters 2/3 of them. But that 1/3 is the remnant, and then that constitutes the entire nation at that time. And we're talking like 3 days before the second coming. 3 days before the second coming, and that's all that's left of Israel, is that 1/3. Now, what that 1/3, as far as numerals are concerned, we have no idea what that will be cut down to. But that's where you end up understanding when you put it all together. Okay, so it's very clear that God has a plan for Israel, that the nation will come to faith in the Messiah, and that, again, all the nation represents the 1/3, and that will be who God uses to fulfill his promises in the kingdom and give them all the promises of Abraham, the land covenant, the Davidic covenant, the new covenant. Everything will be enacted at that point in time to that group. That group then goes into the kingdom, and they have children, and they have babies, and they produce, and that will constitute the remnant of Israel now flourishing as a nation of Israel. So that's from pillar to post that I gave you, and I still am shocked that if you just read the scriptures and that's what it's saying, you cannot deny this pattern of what scripture is saying about Israel. He will use them again. That's the whole point. And if he doesn't, then you can't trust God. Because the promises he's made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to the nation of Israel, if he doesn't make good on those promises, how can you trust him for any promises he makes to you? If the promises could be abrogated and taken away from Israel and given to the church, then why can't he abrogate his laws to you or his promises to you and say, you know what, I don't like you anymore. I'm going to give your promises to someone else. That's ridiculous. God would never act like that. And so what you see at the heart of Calvinism, it's a rigged system. It's a rigged system, and the foundation of it is anti-Semitism. That's what it is, because it doesn't hermeneutically make sense why you would have replacement theology. It just doesn't make sense. You have to do some definite twisting of Scripture that when Paul is talking about Israel, you have to pour in a different meaning in that. You have to say, well, we're the new Israel, or you have to redefine that, which is exactly what the cults do. But anyway, so today there's a current remnant. Now, okay, we have Jewish people in our congregation that are Jewish and they believe in Jesus. They're messianic. And so how do they fit? How do they fit in the remnant of Israel, and how do they fit in the church? Well, it's simple. If you're Jewish, you occupy two positions. A Jewish believer in our congregation or any church congregation, they're part of the body of the Messiah, because the body of the Messiah is both Jew and Gentile, but they also occupy a second position of being in the remnant of Israel. They constitute that. And so they occupy two positions. You and I, as Gentiles, we occupy one position, the body of Christ. But they occupy two. So that's how that functions out. The remnant, so let me read this real quick so people can understand this. In the second point, it says the remnant exists because God's grace is in salvation, not human performance. So in Romans 11:5, and many people misunderstand what he's saying here, it goes, even so then, at this present time there is a remnant according to the election of grace. Now here's when, instantaneously, when a Calvinist reads election, they instantly pour in their own meanings into election. So God has preserved a group here, despite their free will, despite believing. And it's like, no, that's not what he's talking about. Being chosen has to do with an after effect. And many times choosing has to do with a group. So like in Ephesians chapter 1, it says you were chosen in Christ from the foundation of the world. It's not you personally. It was the vehicle that he chose, which is the church that Paul's referring to. And the church was the vehicle that God would use. Now, how do you get into the vehicle? You believe in the Messiah, according to Ephesians 13 through 14. Once you hear and then you believe, you go into the vehicle called the body of the Messiah, and now you're in Christ. That body of the Messiah is what was determined that would happen. It was a mystery, but that was what would be determined, the vehicle that you would put yourself in. In the Old Testament, the vehicle that you rode in was what? The nation of Israel. That was the first vehicle. So you want to think of it like a vehicle or a ship, okay? And so the first ship that God called was the nation of Israel, okay? And that was the vehicle you rode in. And so the vehicle he's talking about in Romans 11 is the vehicle of the remnant of Israel, okay? So, question then, how would you become part of the remnant of Israel? God saying, "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I choose you, and you're going to come in it, and I reject you." No, it's according to the choosing of grace. And what does that mean? It means how God how God gives salvation to us. He gives salvation to us by grace. And he expects in return, if he offers it by grace, that we respond in faith. That's the mechanics. That's what Paul has been talking about. So it's called the choosing of grace because that's the vehicle that God offers salvation through, obviously Messiah, but it's by grace through faith. And this not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not of works, lest anyone boast. It's Paul wrote Ephesians 2, 8 and 9. He also wrote Romans 11, 5. He's not going to contradict himself. So what he's saying is, look, the way the remnant is according to this election of grace is these are believers who exercised their free will and believed in Messiah, and God gave them salvation. That's all he's saying. And that's how they became part of the group. And so the choosing then is not them personally. The choosing is God will always have a remnant. He will always have a remnant in the church. It's a smaller group. It's a smaller group in Israel, and that's what he has. And here's the thing. It's the group that's chosen, not you individually. So God always has chosen that there's going to be a believing element in Israel, a believing element in the church. He said that about the church. The church is going to be made up of what? Wheat and tares, right? Not everybody in the church is going to be a believer. Not everybody in Israel is a believer, right? That's how it's always been. And so there's a believing element, and he's always reserved those, the wheat among the tares. He reserves them, and they're the ones who freely believe in him. That's all it is. It's no more than that. You don't have to read any theology into that. Okay, so what does that imply? It implies then that the Abrahamic covenant, the land covenant, the Davidic covenant, and the new covenant are still in effect. They haven't been done away with, and they still apply to Israel. So those need to be fulfilled. They cannot be fulfilled in the church because in that sense, let's talk about the land. How can the land be fulfilled in the church? We don't own land. We're not given land. That's ridiculous. So in order to have the fulfillment of the land covenant, which goes from the great river Euphrates to the Wadi of Egypt, which Israel never accomplished, ever, which is a lie if someone tells you they did, because they never accomplished going from the Euphrates to the great Wadi of Egypt. They never have done that, not even in Solomon's day. So how do you apply that to the church? Well, the only way you can do that is do some type of mental gymnastics and say land doesn't mean really land anymore. That's the only way you can do that. Land doesn't mean land anymore. It's just, it's all fulfilled in Christ. Yeah, I don't know what that means. Yeah, I don't know what that means, man. And so we don't understand it all. Yeah, don't punt to pietism. You tell me how the land is fulfilled in the church. And you press them on the issue. Okay? You push them into the corner and explain that to me. Okay? Second thing, Davidic covenant. In the Davidic covenant, Israel is told that you will have a descendant of David sitting on a political throne of David forever. Okay? And that includes a dynasty. That dynasty includes Jews. It includes the nation of Israel. Because in order to have a Jewish dynasty that's under the name of David, it implies you have to have a nation. You have to have a Jewish nation. And you have to have a Jewish house called the house of David. Well, obviously Messiah fits that. But here's the thing. It is a Jewish political throne. And he is not on a Jewish political throne right now. What throne is Jesus on right now? He's on a throne. What throne is he sitting on right now? He's sitting on God the Father's throne, right? That's the throne he's sitting on. He says that in the book of Revelation. He is not sitting on David's throne because David's throne is a Jewish political throne that is in Israel, in the capital of Israel, where the temple will be one day. And that's where the political throne is. In order to sit on that throne, you have to rule through the nation of Israel. That's what the Davidic covenant implies. There must be a nation to rule through because that's what's promised to Israel. So, if you're going to have Jesus on David's throne, it implies you have to have the nation of Israel to rule through. He will rule through that nation to the rest of the Gentile nations. That's where the promise that Moses said, one day Israel will be the head of the nations and not the tail. And why are they going to be the head of the nations? Because the Messiah rules through them. They have never been the head of the nations, ever in their history. Only when Messiah rules and reigns through them. Okay, let's move to the new covenant. So these replacement theology types want to say, well, we're the possessors of the new covenant. And I want to say, well, that's fine. But let's look at Jeremiah 31 and see who the covenant was actually made to, because it was not made to the church. If you read Jeremiah 31, it said, I made it to Israel and to Judah. That's who he's made it to. So this became the problem in the church of like, well, how do we relate to the new covenant? Because if the new covenant is made to the Jewish people, and to those who believe in the Messiah, how do we Gentiles fit from coming in for the church? Well, great, brilliant question. Paul answered that. And Paul answers that in Romans chapter 11 and says, here's how you fit. You fit into it by partaking of the natural tree. You are a wild olive branch that has been grafted in, and you partake of that sap, and really you partake of the spiritual blessings of the new covenant that derives itself from the Abrahamic covenant. He goes, but you do not support the root. The root supports you. And the root was made to Israel. So, how we relate to the new covenant is that we are not overtakers. We are partakers of the new covenant in spiritual blessings. And he will go into that in Ephesians chapter 1 and explain that we have all these spiritual blessings in the Messiah. He says 11 times in the Messiah in chapter 1. And he will say these blessings are in him and they are spiritual blessings. He defines the blessings as spiritual, which implies this. We do not partake in the physical blessings of the new covenant. Only Israel gets the physical blessings. And what do the physical blessings imply? Health, wealth. The wine is dripping from the hills. The deserts bloom. Those types of things. And so this is where you see the health and wealth prosperity gospel that's with us today. They take those very passages about the millennial kingdom, about Israel, and they take them from them and steal them and say it's us now. And so we should be healthy and wealthy and abundantly rich. That's only for Israel in the Messianic kingdom. That's not for you. You're reading passages that don't even belong to you. And that's where the health and wealth prosperity gospel comes from. It's taking those passages out of context. It is true. In the Messianic kingdom, Israel will be extremely wealthy and healthy. They will have no infant mortality. No Jew will ever die if they believe. And so they have abundant health, wealth, everything given then to them because all the promises are coming to fruition, especially the new covenant. Okay, so we participate in the spiritual blessings of the new covenant. Okay, now can God bless you materially? Absolutely, but it's not a guarantee because we are partakers in the spiritual blessings of that. So we're not overtakers. That's the issue. So when you're talking to someone that has replacement theology, and at least they're willing to talk about this, you have to push them into the corner about these covenants and say, you tell me how land gets accomplished. You tell me how Jesus is going to reign through the nation of Israel if there's no nation of Israel. How is he going to do that? Well, it's spiritual. That's what I thought you would say. That's what I thought you would say. And in order to do that, you have to tell me that the text doesn't mean what it says as I'm reading it. That's what you have to tell me. That Israel doesn't mean Israel. That you spiritualize the text. And my response is, I knew you would say that because I already know your argument. I knew you would say that. And that's the problem with replacement theology. They don't take hermeneutics seriously. They break the rules of hermeneutics. They will take prophecies about Jesus literally, but when it turns into Israel, they allegorize it or they spiritualize it. And it's like, well, if you're going to be consistent, how come you take the prophecies about Jesus being born in Bethlehem as literal, but you won't take the land promises about Israel owning the land from the great river Euphrates to the Wadi? You won't take that literally. You're inconsistent with your hermeneutics, and that's a violation of biblical interpretation. You have to be consistent. So again, my point is to you guys, because this is what you're going to deal with. I deal with it all the time with these knuckleheads that come through our doors and want to espouse replacement theology, and it happens all the time. And you've got knuckleheads online that are doing this, and they don't know what they're talking about. They've never put in the hours to study or anything like that. But they go on YouTube and they get their little platform and they go out there and espouse nonsense. And the problem is, if people are not grounded in this stuff, they get taken into it. We've lost people because of this, guys. This is why I'm emphasizing this. We got people that are listening to TikTok and Instagram about Israel being replaced by the church, and we're no longer in Israel. And they've been sitting in our church for years, and they listen to one TikTok, and they're messed up. They hear one Instagram, and they're messed up. They hear some idiot on YouTube that has no theological background whatsoever espousing nonsense, and they say, yeah, that sounds about right. What's wrong with you? You know what's happening? People don't have a foundation. They don't have a foundation in all of this. It's a big deal, man, because you know what's happening right now? The church is becoming anti-Semitic. And they're using theology to justify this. Look, I've always told you guys, it's 1938 again. What I'm seeing develop in the church here in America, I already saw historically develop in 1938 in the German churches. That replacement theology is the fuel that caused them to ignore the Jews being boxed in the trains and going behind them, and the stupid pastor saying, sing louder, we don't want to hear the Jews yelling behind us. Where did that come from? It came from Martin Luther and his replacement theology in Lutheranism. And Catholicism is just as guilty as much because of the replacement theology. And people say, well, you're telling me there's a tie between replacement theology and anti-Semitism? Absolutely. Absolutely, I'm telling you that. There is a direct tie, because all I have to do is go through church history, and I will show you the tie every time that it leads to the Crusades, to the pogroms, to the Spanish Inquisition, to the Jews being kicked out of Spain, to the pogroms in Russia, to Nazi Germany. It's always there. And the scary part is, I'm seeing it now. I'm seeing it now. We see the Tuckers, and Tucker is what? Episcopalian, replacement theology. Candace Owens, Catholic, replacement theology. All these knuckleheads on YouTube that are doing replacement theology, they're all from these denominations that have that doctrine. And it's insidious. It is so satanic. So anyway, the point is, Israel's story is not finished. Does that mean that everything Israel does is perfect? Not at all. They do stupid things a lot of times because they're in unbelief. Netanyahu will do stupid things. They will do things militarily that I don't agree with. They will do things like vaccinating 95% of their population. Stupid. I can't believe they did that, and they let that happen. That was stupid. They was stupid to give up the Gaza in 2005. That was stupid. Don't give the Palestinians any land. And it's stupid if they make another deal with Hamas in Gaza and let Hamas stay with the Palestinians. That would be stupid on their part. And you know what else is stupid? That they don't manufacture their own weapons. That's stupid too. So here's my point about this. Just because I'm pro-Israel doesn't mean I can't see that when they make stupid moves. And doesn't mean I can't disagree with their government, especially their judicial branch of government is off the chain. Their media is off the chain, leftist and all that stuff. So, but what am I saying is, based on these passages, I'm a Christian Zionist, which means what? It means their return is biblical in 1948. It's a fulfillment of prophecy. Number two, they have a right to exist. They have a right to self-determination, have a right to protect themselves, and God has a future plan for them to be all saved. That's all Christian nationalism believes. It doesn't say, I blanket everything Israel does, because they do stupid things a lot of times. So that's what we're talking about. Romans 11, if you read it, rejects replacement theology. Church is not Israel, and that's why Israel continues to this very day. Okay, let me move on now. And maybe we'll get through this one, and then we'll get to the next one. A shoot will come from the stump or the root of Jesse. This is Isaiah 11. So I'm backtracking just a little bit. There shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of its roots. Now, this has Christmas implications. So you guys studying your Christmas stories right now, this is a big deal. In Isaiah 11, talking about the stem or the root or the stump of Jesse. Rod or stem is twig and shoot, cut up, cut down, stump, that type of thing. So you're looking like, basically, you're looking at the house of David as a tree. That's the image you want to have in your mind. And the house of David, that tree it's been cut, and there's just a stump left, if that makes sense. This is what Isaiah is predicting about the house of David, okay? And what he is saying is that out of this stump will come, out of the stump, a little sprig, a little stem coming out of this stump. And that stem that comes out of that stump is going to be the Messiah. But what is he trying to say? He's trying to say that the house of David will almost go extinct. That's the idea of it being a tree, and then it's being cut down, right, to a stump level, and then a little twig coming out from the stump. It's a little green shoot that comes out. Obviously, that's the Messiah. But here's the interesting thing. Well, what happens to the line of David? It gets to the point that it's like a stump, it's almost non-existent. Well, if you follow chronology on what happens to David's line, it gets down really bad to like nothing almost. It starts out flourishing under David and under Solomon and whatnot, and it keeps going, but then it starts whittling down because satanic attacks start happening on the line. Because guess what? The minute that God names that the Messiah is going to come from the line of David, guess what happens to David's line? It gets attacked. So it's like anytime he narrows it down, then Satan goes right after that. And David's line gets down to almost nothing. It down to like a few people left. And again, you're looking at King David, man. Once he became powerful and he was ruling all of Israel, he's the king, man. You got money, you got power, you got everything that a king could want. But notice that the stump is not called the stump of David. Why is it not called the stump of David? Because it's clearly referring to that Messiah is from the line of David, but it keeps referring to the stump of Jesse. That's odd. It's a prophecy. It's what we call in Hebrew a remez, a hint. It's a hint of something that Isaiah is trying to tell you. That yes, that big powerful tree of David is going to be cut down almost to nothing, and you're going to have this one little green shoot come out of it, and that's going to be the Messiah. And it looks like it's non-existent, but it's the stump of Jesse and not the stump of David. You have to think back of why Isaiah would use Jesse. Jesse is David's dad, okay? So let's go back to Jesse. Who was Jesse? He's nothing but a poor guy. He's nobody, okay? He's obscure. He's not royal. That's why he doesn't use the word David. He's unroyal. He's just a peasant living in an insignificant village in Bethlehem, Ephrath. It's like nothing, man. And so if Isaiah was going to use David's name, it would bring in the idea of kingship, military fame, palace, royal, that kind of stuff. But he's saying no, it's Jesse. It's poor, it's obscure, it's nothing, it's nobody, no money. Now what is he trying to refer to? He is trying to refer to how David's line will be at the birth of the Messiah. When this little fig or twig comes up, that being the Messiah. What do you mean? David's line gets so broken down, and they're not ruling. They lost the throne once Babylon came in 86 or 596 BC. I can't remember the 86 or 96. 596 BC. That was the end of David's throne as far as anyone ruling on David's throne. And so even when the exiles came back, there was no David's throne. And then eventually, Idumean, Herod eventually got on that throne from Petra, and he was on the throne. And the Maccabees were ruling before that or whatnot. But no one was sitting on David's throne. Okay? So, or at least from the house of David. So, what it's saying is that when Messiah is going to be born, his line will be like Jesse in terms of obscurity, poverty, and just from nowhere. Okay? So let's do the math. The line of David is seen in Mary and Joseph, right? Is Mary and Joseph, do you have any indications in the Gospels that Mary and Joseph are like Jesse? Have you read it closely enough to what the Gospels are saying about Mary and Joseph? And what are the Gospels indicating about Mary and Joseph? Okay, you know the story. They had the census. You know the Christmas story. What do they have to do? Go to Bethlehem, right? They're up in the north. They have to go down south. What's the problem in Bethlehem? There's no room at the inn, for goodness sakes. No room at the inn. One of the issues of no room in the inn, they don't have any money. So they end up staying in a place, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I'll have to look at it again. They stayed in a place where travelers went. It was like an RV park, so to speak, you know. But I want you to keep in mind that it's not. People have an inn like an old English inn. It's not like that. The kind of place was a convasseur. I can't remember the name of it. Something. Anyway, travelers would go there, and it was free to stay there. That's where they ended up, in a free RV park, so to speak. It was just, that's where everyone went that didn't have any money. They don't have money to pay for a room or anything like that. They don't have the money. The other indication that they're like Jesse is they need to make a sacrifice because Messiah is their firstborn, at least to Mary, and they have to do a sacrifice as far as a dedication of the firstborn. Well, you have to bring a lamb for sacrifice, I think, on that one. But if you're poor, you can bring 2 turtle doves. And what do they bring? The turtle doves, which indicates that Mary and Joseph are in extreme poverty. They're like nothing. They have nothing. And what it's trying to show you is that extreme poverty, and Matthew's trying to connect you to that, and so is Luke. He's trying to connect you to that to show you that's the condition of the house of David. And both Mary and Joseph are from the house of David, right? One's from one line, and the other one's from Nathan's line. And that's how poverty-stricken the line is, and then the shoot comes up. So it's likened to Jesse, if that makes sense. That's what he's trying to say. So there's your Christmas thing. The other thing about their having no money, obviously being placed in a manger is a feeding trough. And then what do they wrap them in? Swaddling. What is swaddling clothes? It's grave clothes. That's what you wrap bodies in. So what you're seeing in the Christmas story is extreme poverty. Extreme poverty. That she doesn't even have blankets to wrap him in. So she goes and gets grave clothes. That's what you would wrap dead bodies in, is swaddling clothes. And they wrapped him in grave clothes, which again points to his ultimate, what he would do, right? I think you can see the connection there of this baby is born to die. In fact, at his birth, he's wrapped in grave clothes to indicate that one day this baby's going to die. You can't get more imagery than that and symbolic in that. But again, it's also pointing to the poverty of them. They don't even have clothes for the child. You know good and well, if you were a mom and we're going to go down from the Galilee area and we're going to go down to Bethlehem and make this trek on a donkey, I'm going to have a baby here pretty soon. Don't you think she would have taken stuff with her? But she is so poor, she doesn't have anything. It's not like she's like, hey, we'll get back in time to have a baby, no problem. She's not like that. But people are not putting two and two together when they're reading the story. You traveled like that, especially, it's like, what, 2 hours by car going from Galilee to, or even maybe longer than that if you hit traffic, to where Bethlehem is. 2.5 hours, okay? So from here to Anaheim. From here to Anaheim. You're on a mule from here to Anaheim. You think you're coming back soon? You're probably knowing that you're going there and you're going to have a baby there because you're not going to be able to make it back. You're on a trek, man. You're not getting back anytime soon. But she doesn't take anything with her other than what she had. And so they get the swaddling clothes. But that's the fulfillment of the prophecy. That's how Messiah will be born, is in such poverty he will be like Jesse. That's how poor David's dad was. So that's why Isaiah doesn't name David, because David was a king eventually. Yeah, David fought his way there, but that's what he's trying to say, if that makes sense. So anyway, theological significance, dead stump, it's the humbled Davidic line. No power, no throne, no king, just poverty and obscurity, which is exactly as Messiah came in the kenosis, in great humility, right? And again, this is a good point that if you're thinking about Jewish evangelism and you want to witness to the Jews, you have to think about, because they're really big on the second coming, right? And that's why a lot of them will discount Jesus, because they'll say, well, he's supposed to come in and usher the kingdom. He's supposed to come in and establish the kingdom and vanquish our enemies and all this other stuff, and he didn't. Yeah, but do you remember the prophets predicted that he doesn't come in royalty. He doesn't come as the king to sit on David's throne the first time. He comes from the root of Jesse. And that should be your talking point when you're talking to a Jewish person in love and trying to witness to them, is like, well, tell me this. If he was supposed to come in royal splendor and vanquish your enemies, how come it says he comes in the nature of Jesse, poor, poverty-stricken, obscure, not on David's throne? Why does it say that? So what I'm trying to get at is it's indicating his first coming is very different than his second coming, right? And that's what you have to start showing a Jewish person, is the difference between the two, right? And so anyway, let's see if I anything else I want in there. No, I think I'm good there. Okay. So Messiah is not going to appear in royal splendor the first time. He will rise from poverty and obscurity. He even said that the Son of Man, the birds have nests, the birds have nests, the foxes have dens, and the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. So he was even poverty-stricken in his ministry. Of course, people donated, but he just was poverty-stricken the whole time. So anyway, that's the origins of the Davidic covenant being fulfilled in the first coming. Okay, we got to take a break. We'll do 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and do some current events, okay? Okay, we're going to get going. If you will make your way back, and we'll do part 2 and kind of look at what's going on in current society. So I want to bring you up to speed on what's actually happening in grocery stores and what's getting ready to come your way. And what we're calling this, and I'm getting this from Patrick Wood from Technocracy News, and he highlighted an article on his website that I paid particular attention to, and it's called surveillance pricing. And there's a prophetic aspect to this, but some weird stuff is happening. So first of all, we'll start with Kroger's. So Kroger's is doing kind of what we call surveillance pricing. Okay, and I don't think we have a Kroger's here in Bakersfield, do we? No. Do we have them in California? I don't think so. But anyway, with one grocery store does something, it's going to catch on, and eventually all these grocery stores are going to be doing it. So what they're doing, they're starting to do this surveillance of customers, facial recognitions. Some are doing it with or without, but there's some weird stuff. Anyway, the U.S. Senate sent the chairman and CEO of Kroger a letter warning him about what they're doing. And again, there is no regulations right now on facial recognitions in grocery stores or any of this other stuff that I'm going to show you. So there is no regulations because this can be happening to you. So anyway, they highlight to Kroger and they say, look, I'm writing you today regarding Kroger's adoption of the use of electronic shelving labels. So if you've been in the grocery store lately, even in Walmart, some of the labels are digital, okay? They're not paper. So that means they can change the pricing on it within a second, okay? So they're called electronic shelving labels, okay? In dozens of its grocery stores, it says. These digital price tags may enable Kroger and other grocery chains to transition to dynamic pricing. This is the problem with it. So it's not just simply about the grocery store having the ease of changing the prices. It's the fact that they can do dynamic pricing with the labels, okay? That's what the United States Senate is getting after them about, in which the price of basic household goods could surge based on the time of the day, the weather, or other transitory events, allowing stores to calibrate price increases to extract maximum profits at a time when the amount of Americans' income spent on food is at a 30-year high. So they start pointing out the concerns. And in this letter, it continues on. It says, widespread adoption of digital price tags appears posed to enable large grocery stores to squeeze customers to increase profits. Analysts have indicated that the widespread use of dynamic pricing will result in groceries and other consumer goods being priced like airline tickets, creating a sense of urgency, a sense of scarcity that wouldn't exist if there were just publicly posted prices that everybody understood, allowing sellers to figure out ways to extract the maximum amount of profit for each customer. Okay, he continues on in this letter. These devices also introduce potential for grocery giants to abuse their power and surge grocery prices, raising prices suddenly and at times when certain products are in the highest demand. For example, stores may use this technology to raise the price of turkeys in the days leading up to Thanksgiving, or the price of ice cream on a hot day, causing customers to face unexpected price hikes when they reach the grocery aisle and find themselves unable to afford groceries that they had originally budgeted for. It continues on the other highlighted, through the partnership with Microsoft. Okay, that's a red flag. Anytime you hear Microsoft, that's a red flag. Kroger plans to place cameras at its digital displays, which will use face recognition tools to determine gender and age of customer captured on camera and present them with personalized offers of advertisement on the Edge shelf. Edge will allow Kroger to use customer data to build personalized profiles of each customer and then use those profiles to determine how much price hiking each of us can tolerate. Quickly updating and displaying customers' maximum willingness to pay on the digital price. Okay, this is the problem. It's not about Walmart being able to change the price, hey, we're going to up their price of eggs or anything. It's changing the price according to the person. Based on AI reading the person, putting the data together, what that person typically buys, what's the socioeconomic status of that person, how much money did they make, can they afford this, and can we raise the price enough to where they will continue to buy it? What's the price break that they will stop buying something? And so what could happen is you feasibly go into a store and you typically buy something, and the price would change because the facial recognition would hit you, and they say, aha, that's Brandon, and we don't like him. So I am going to raise the price to what I know economically he can afford. Versus someone else goes there and they would say, well, this person is blah, 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 blah. We're going to lower the price for them. So you would have this up and down pricing according to the person buying the product. Not a flat cost. This is where it's going. This is why the Senate sent this to Kroger and said, we understand what you're doing. And the problem is, all these grocery stores are getting on board on this because they have AI abilities and facial recognitions. Okay? So basically what Patrick Wood is saying, and this article continues to say, every time you step in a grocery store with facial recognition, you step into a machinery of data that tracks, analyzes, and shares and influences your shopping behavior. So I'll give you some examples. Here's New York Times. Large grocers took advantage of pandemic supply chain disruptions. So don't think that these grocery stores are altruistic. They hiked up the prices, and we already know what they did during the pandemic, right? Remember toilet paper? Remember all that? Antiseptic and alcohol and all this stuff, you know, the hand washing stuff, soap, you couldn't find it. We already saw what they did, okay? And we already know that everybody's concerned about their groceries. Okay, voters are concerned about inflation, cite the cost of food and groceries as their top concerns. This is what everyone's saying. I am concerned about the food prices. Yeah, we all are. Everybody is. I get it. But Los Angeles Times had this article, the future of shopping is here with digital price tags, and some are worried. Yeah, we should be. So Cooler, so here's what's happening like at Walmart and Kroger. They have these screens. It's called Cooler Screens. That's the company. And they install these digital screens that embeds cameras and sensors to replace refrigerator and freezer doors that usually are see-through in grocery stores. And what they're doing is, in the initial reporting, the Wall Street Journal had this, on Cooler Screens, controversial partnership with Walgreens, Cooler Screens touted its ability to use facial detection to infer features such as age and gender to tailor the digital ads on the screen. So again, you don't see the product, you just see what it wants you to see, if that makes sense, okay? Based on you. So then Kroger expanded its partnership with Cooler Screens in 2023. Kroger insists that the sensors do not collect on store shoppers' data. Yeah, right, I don't believe that. And that Kroger does not seek to identify customers through facial recognition technology. Then why have it then? It's only to detect customers' presence, dwell time, and doors open. No, it's more than that. You're using AI. You're using facial recognition. So again, more articles. Kroger's facial recognition plans draw increasingly concerns from lawmakers. Yes. Okay. So here's like what Patrick Wood is saying. So you walk into a store, okay, and the facial recognition is watching you. It's reading you, and then it can connect to the internet and look what your credit score is. It can look whatever you have, how much money you make, and go on whatever. And basically, it's surveilling you and giving you a surveillance pricing. Then profits from the surveillance capitalism by selling all the data collected about you to the highest bidder. So they can sell your data, but they're also going to sell you stuff. So basically, surveillance pricing refers to the practice whereby companies collect and obtain individualized, personalized information about their actual potential customers and use a variety of techniques to target different prices to specific customers for the same goods or services to generate greater profits. The goal of surveillance pricing is to determine the highest price that the business infers that the customer is willing to pay. So we're not talking about a baseline of how much eggs cost. We're talking about how much would you pay for eggs? And the AI will determine that. Does that sound crazy? But this is bad. This also keeps individual consumers in the dark about lower prices offered to other customers. So you might be, you might be charged, $8 or whatever for whatever product. Someone comes along, they only charge the other person $4, but they're charging you 8. Sounds like communism in a weird way, because it's trying to make everyone equal. But it's not equal. It's robbing people. Related to this, personalized pricing refers to the practice of business using consumer-specific data about their conduct or characteristics to set different prices to different consumers based on what the business thinks they're willing to pay. In contrast, dynamic pricing refers to using non-customer specific variables to adjust prices depending on changes in demand and supply, often real time. Examples of companies using non-customer specific variables to change prices include Uber prices surging during rainy weather. So your Uber price will go from $50 to $250, okay? Or last minute flight price increases. Or Ticketmaster, for instance, charging more than $22,000 for a Taylor Swift concert ticket because of massive demand, whereas someone else paid $300. But based on demand, they could put the ticket up to $22,000. So this is what's called dynamic pricing. It may also be called surge pricing. Now they do dynamic pricing with Airbnbs, by the way. And a lot of things are using dynamic pricing. Okay, based on the season, the flow, things are more expensive, that type of thing. But they could base it on the demands. Okay, so this is bordering and probably crossing the line of price discrimination. Okay, so you have sellers, same product, but different prices in different markets. Well, all of these practices fall under the broader umbrella of price discrimination, where a business charges different prices for similar products for reasons unrelated to the cost to the benefit of the business. In the Federal Trade Commission, in price discrimination, Robinson-Patman violations, a seller charging competing buyers different prices for the same commodity or discriminating in a provision of allowances, ergo compensation for advertising and other services, may be violating the Robinson-Patman Act. Price discriminations are generally lawful, particularly if they reflect the different cost of dealing with different buyers or are a result of a seller's attempt to meet the competitor's offering. So we're not getting a lot of help from the Federal Trade Commission. So here's a little bit of example of surveillance pricing. The products are shown or prices displayed differ for each customer or consumer depending on where the consumer is, what time it is, who the consumer is, what the consumer is doing, and the prior actions the consumer has taken or interactions with the seller. So you get different prices. You get that for $39, you get that for $49, based on who you are, based on where you're at, based on all this other stuff. For example, do you have a Target app? If you have a Target app, this is what the Target app did. Target charged $100 more for a TV on its app when the consumer was in the vicinity of Target store versus farther away. Yeah, because Target had determined consumers are willing to pay more the closer they were to a store. So they charged more when you were in the store. But if you're looking at the app and you just do that, you don't know that it changed on you. That's the problem. You don't know it changed. An Apple Watch band went up $2 just on the proximity to the Apple store. A Shark vacuum went up $40. A Graco child care car seat jumped $72, and a Dyson vacuum shot up $148 on the app while inside the store. Okay, so if you were in the store, you're using the app, I'm going to buy the Dyson vacuum, you paid $148 more than if you were living in Timbuktu. just by being in the store. And no one, the consumer didn't understand this, that the app was actually charging more. So Target's doing it, Apple's doing it, they're all doing it. Orbitz inferred that if you used a Mac, that you were willing to spend more in your hotels. Guess what? They steered you to more expensive hotels if you were using a Mac to make your plans in traveling. And you wouldn't know the difference. Now, if you would have did a side-by-side comparison and said, well, I'm going to use my PC versus my Mac, you would have been shown a different hotel option. This is happening. No one knows this is going on because of AI. Okay? This is big problems. Big problems. Booking sites also charge higher prices for the same hotel rooms based on what city the consumer was browsing the website from, leading to a difference of more than $500 for the same room in one case, based on where you're making your reservations at. Bakersfield versus New York. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, or Oildale. Staying at I guess if you're making plans to stay at the Waldorf Astoria in New York, they're going to charge you different if you're making the plans in Oildale versus making the plans in Manhattan. I guess. So, what's the deal with the electronic shelf labels? Have you seen those types of things? Okay. They're small screens that replace paper price labels in stores, allowing grocers to change prices in mere seconds rather than having employees physically change the price tags. Okay, got that. But the problem is these screens can be changed throughout the day, making it possible for the shopper to see one price at the shelf when picking up the item and another price when checking out. And if you're not paying attention, that's what ends up happening. So here's the thing. Even if a retail store is not using ESLs or facial recognition technology, it can still engage in surveillance pricing through the vast network of data collection and sharing that occurs without consumers knowing this. Grocery stores may collect the data from the consumer's past purchases, app usage, and loyalty program usage, but also may incorporate data from third parties like data brokers. So they're using AI to bring this all in to determine what they're going to charge you for your steak that you buy, for your meat or your eggs, okay? So what's going into the data collection? What do they know about us? It's this. It's sensitive information. Geolocation, age, gender, race, ethnicity, finances, religion, employment, political speech, online activities. That's all what the AI is feeding into the pricing. Okay, let's theorize. You're me, okay? You make political comments about all kinds of things, right? Or whatever. I wonder how much they're going to charge me, right? Yeah, I can't afford it. So you can see that, I don't know, let's say you're a big Second Amendment guy, all right? Like we're probably all in this room Second Amendment guys. But the problem is, oh, you're one of those guys. Well, here's the price for you. Here's the price for you. And it'll be oh so astronomical, you're like, I can't afford that. That's right. That's right. Because based on the data we're collecting on you, that's the price we have determined it costs you. That is scary. That is freaking me out, man. And if Kroger is already launching this, guys, don't you think the rest of them are going to pick up on this? The data would include reluctant gamblers, for instance. What do you mean? Well, based on consumers lingering on a sports betting site longer than expected, because the AI would say, that guy gambles. I saw him online, and we're going to make a price. He just won $1,000 at Tachi Palace or whatever, the Hard Rock Cafe in Tajon. He just won $1,000. Let's up the price on this guy. He's a gambler. Or how about this? Grocery stores might categorize shoppers as interested in fitness and not price sensitive, which, hey, they got some money. And they're interested in fitness. So based on that, let's charge more because these people buy organic foods, which are more costly. They don't buy Cheetos. They don't buy Twinkies. And so they're all into, they go to the gym because we can see the AI is telling us they go to the gym, they're on the gym, websites, they're looking at muscle and fitness, they're looking at this, they're looking at that. So these types of individuals are more willing to pay higher prices for whole foods. Let's charge them more. Rather than, they're not going to buy white Wonder Bread. They're not going to buy stuff, that's going to hurt them. They're not buying canned foods. They're not buying processed foods. So let's up the price on these people. New parents who are less price sensitive because they have a baby. Okay? Versus you not having a baby, you'd be more price sensitive. But if you have a baby, I need supplies. Let's up the price on those guys. Especially if they need formula. Yeah, well, maybe they'll factor that in. I don't know. Again, that's probably one of the AI things versus, hey, do you live in Seven Oaks or do you live in Oildale? If and that's what they'll do. That's what they'll do. Or how about this one? Individuals who are in an area experiencing flooding. So they're going to get stress relief products. So what we're going to do, we're going to up the product's price because that's in need right now. Here's an example. And Patrick Wood gives this example. So say you buy multivitamins periodically, okay? And that store has been recording your purchases. They're already recording your purchases, right? Especially if you have apps. But today on a whim, you've reached for a prenatal vitamin instead. Okay? Nobody knows you're pregnant. And you're not sure you are. Okay? But anyway, the store uses facial recognition to determine that you are a young woman, a childbearing age, and bingo, it's got you. What do you mean? Before the day is over, you start seeing targeted ads for products related to your pregnancy in your email, social media feeds, and even your smart TV, and the feeding frenzy starts. Because you're a young woman, you're looking at prenatal, got you. And you understand what you've lost at that point in time. You have lost all privacy at that point in time. Whatever you're buying, individuals who are in an area experiencing flooding, to target them, I already did that one. Okay, here's this. So based on your shopping history and data shared from data brokers, including internet browsing history. So here's the other thing I've always said. Quit using Google. You've got to use an internet that is not tracking you. Stop using Google. Google is tracking you. Okay? There's plenty of other things out there. DuckDuckGo, other ones out there that you can use that don't do tracking. Okay? And so anyway, they're watching your purchases. They'll look at the grocery stores you may refer to, and your age, your gender, your race, your economic status, family makeup, health conditions, and other lifestyle characteristics. Okay, so why is this a problem? Well, it's violating your consumer privacy by collecting data about your consumption and using it for unexpected and out-of-context purposes. That's the problem. It increases the cost of everyday goods based on the price threshold the consumer is willing to pay. That's the problem. So it's stealing your information. The AI is using it and saying, I'm going to make a determination that they can afford this, and let's see if they buy it. And you're like, I have to buy it because I need that ingredient or I need this. Well, this is how much it costs for you, Mr. Brandon. And so you buy it, and guess what happens? Oh, he bought it at $5. Let's try it next time, $5.20. That's $5 nuts. They can just play around with this. It's insane, right? You have no autonomy because they're covertly influencing your choices. And like I said, there are no facial recognition technology regulations right now. They can use it, and there's nothing to stop them. There's also no data minimization regulations that they can collect on you. None. You know, we all thought, well, you know, I understand they're data collecting on my phone. I now understand they're data collecting, you know, when I'm surfing the internet and stuff like that. I didn't know that grocery stores would start data collecting. Yeah, yeah. So it's going on even beyond them trying to sell you something, because then they can sell your information to other third parties. And so you're losing your privacy. That's a big problem. Okay, so now let's take a step back and understand the implications of this. I don't see the end of this. I don't see them wanting to stop this at all, because they have everything to gain from this. Everything. I think it's wrong. I think it's totally wrong. And I think it's a form of economic manipulation from the technocratic elite. There's no doubt about that. And that's what the Proverbs warns about. Don't rob the poor because he's poor. That's what it does to people. The elites don't care about this, but it's going to affect you and I, right? And so they're going to squeeze you economically, determining based on what you have. Look, they can find out what you have in your retirement. They can find out how much you're getting paid. AI figures that all out. AI knows that. If it's on the internet, if your information's on the internet, AI knows it already. They already know it. So they can exploit your social status, biometric data. This person is sick. They always have this problem. So let's up the price for this because they're going to buy more of this, whatever that issue is. Let's punish certain groups. Let's punish the Brandons of the world, that they don't keep their mouths shut. And we'll teach them a lesson. We'll make it harder for them to buy this or buy that or buy gas or whatever it might be. And we'll then also use this to manipulate groups. Sale. There's a sale happening and it pops up on your phone. It's really not a sale at all. It's actually charging you $148 more because you're in the store and not in Wasco. Because they're charging more in the store. Guys, this is so horrible economically. And like I showed you, that's why the Senate sent Kroger the letter saying, we see what you're doing, but the problem is there's no one, I don't see anyone else doing anything about this. And here's the thing. You start going in the grocery store and you start realizing that the camera's on you and there's facial recognitions and stuff like that. What they're doing then is you're getting this constant monitoring and you're conditioned that this is the way it's going to be. That there's always going to be a camera on me. There's always this, always that. And you start seeing these digital shelf labels and all this other stuff. You're entering into a world where you're always watched and you're always analyzed. That's pretty scary. Here's an interesting thing. I was reading this today, and I thought it was so apropos for what this is really about, because this is the technocratic elites, you know, partnering with, you know, the grocery stores or just corporations to fleece as much money out of us. You know, and so Israel reached that point in their life where they got tired of the judges. Remember that scene? And they went to Samuel and like, hey, man, we got to have a king. We got to be like everybody else. We're really behind on this stuff. You know, everybody is technologically with kings, and they're doing really good, and we need to get up to speed on this. And it says the elders gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, look, you're old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Come on, man. Now make us a king and to judge us like all the nations. We want to be like everyone else. We want to be like the technocratic elite in Europe and you know, control all the buying and selling. And he said, this will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. So if you guys want a king, here's what you're going to get out of that. He says, he will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots and to be his horsemen. And some will run before his chariots. He will appoint captains over his thousands and captains over his 50s. He will set up some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. And he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage and give it to the officers and the servants. And he will take your male servants and your female servants and your finest young men and your donkeys and put them to his work. And he will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servants. And you will cry out in that day because of your king whom you have chosen for yourself, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Now, what did he just do? He's saying, you want to be like the other nations, right? You want to have a king. Here's what's going to happen. The minute you put that king in place, he's going to take, seize, control, and collect. He's going to take it all from you. And what is Israel's response when they hear that? We want a king. I just warned you, they're going to take everything from you. It's the same principle. Our society wants to be technologically savvy. They want to be technologically, it's going to make everything easier. We can do business better. We can make more money. We want to be like the tech giants. We want to be like the Elon Musk. We want to make as much money as we possibly can. We want to be like that. Yeah? And guess who they're going to take? Us. They're going to take our money. That's what's leaving. Right? And this surveillance stuff is conditioning people for the system of the beast. That's what it is. Look at Revelation. It talks about identification, surveillance, exclusion, can't buy or sell if you don't have the mark, centralized control, the ability to determine who can buy and sell. That's what you're seeing form right in front of you. And the implications with AI and quantum computing, you understand when they marry the two with quantum computing. And quantum computing is just like instantaneously. And basically they can call all your information up in quantum computing instantaneously. Whereas before, if they're using a regular computer without quantum computing, it can take them days. Okay? Now, why is that important? Because if without quantum computing, the AI can't do all the data while you're in the store. It won't have enough time to collect all the data. It will take too long. But you marry that AI with quantum computing, the minute you walk through that store, it's got all the data ready. That's the game changer, is the quantum computing. And these things are master fast, man, big time. And so you're going to have these massive consumer databases, which are building all over our country. Facial recognition is going to be ever. If you're flying, you're already doing facial recognition. Did you know that? They're already doing it. I've already done it to me. In Europe, when you go through, you walk through, and especially in France, Germany, whatever, the cameras look right at your face, man. And then the only way the doors open is if they get your picture, your facial recognition, and it opens everything up. And it's the only way you're getting through. So they're using it, and without your permission. Algorithmic profiling, real-time tracking, digital pricing, dynamic control over buying and selling. So what if you want to go, if you're one of our young people and you want to go buy a house and like, yeah, you know what? Let's see how much you guys make. Well, you make that much? We're going to charge the house for this price. Well, yeah, but you're going to charge this guy this price. Yeah, I know. It's based on dynamic selling. Oh, that's scary. So here's what's happening. Here's what the direction you're going in. You're having data, identity, and then control. You're having privacy, surveillance, manipulation, and free markets to controlled markets. So where do you think you end up economically if they're going to charge you more than someone else? That's right. That's where you're heading. That you're going to kill the middle class, which that's it. We know that is on the agenda. Every Marxist, communist, they love that. They want to kill the middle class, no doubt about that. You're going to make everyone poor because in some strange way, you're stealing from people by charging them more prices based on how much they make, right? It's like a graduated income tax, but this is a graduated price for you. Oh, you make over $100,000. This is your price for chicken, versus if you made $20,000. So they would de-incentivize you making more money because the more money you make, the more they charge you. So it would be better. Well, you can see a bunch of people say, well, why even work? Why even work? Because then these guys are getting it all free. Their chicken costs them $1, and it's costing me $5 to buy chicken because I'm making this amount of money. So they're basically putting me on their level by price gouging me and exploiting my money. And we're doing this. Everybody's getting lowered down. Dude, I don't know about you, but this is freaking me out. This will kill me economically if they base it on that. Now, I hope people step in and maybe stop this. I don't know. Do you think they will? I hope. I hope. But I picked up enough articles from even leftist papers. The New York Times even had an article about this. The Atlantic had an article on it. So the leftist papers are picking up on this. But very few, I didn't see hardly any conservative papers picking up on this notion, which is strangely odd, because they would be the first ones typically economically that, hey, you can't do that. That's crazy talk. Maybe. I don't know. It's just weird. I don't know. But here's the thing. The AI is not reversing itself. We're not going to get away from AI. It's here to stay, and they're using it. And if they're going to say, we're going to collect data, dude, this is how they're going to destroy us economically. At least one of the ways economically. Anyway, any questions on that? That's all I wanted to, yeah. Let's get some mics for some people.
So everything you just described sounds like a very modern, sophisticated version of price gouging.
Yeah, right.
Which used to be illegal.
Yes. That's the thing. And so when I'm reading these articles, a lot of people reference that I thought this is illegal, but then you find out, well, wait a second, there's no regulation on face recognition. There's no regulation on this AI stuff. And so it's happening covertly is what's going on. And again, that's what the letter from the Senate, if you read that entire letter, was trying to say is like, you're price gouging. But this would be like a company charging more, like when a hurricane's happening, and you guys started charging a bunch of money for gas. And Kroger's response was, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. That's not what we're doing. But yet I showed you examples of it did happen. How could you charge me with that? I'm in Target, and you charge me $148 while I'm in, but if I was outside in Wasco, you didn't charge me $148. That's it. That's price gouging. And it's just, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I'm with you. I'm like, I thought that was illegal. Yeah, go ahead, Paula. Go ahead.
Okay, I've been complaining about this for the last 3 or 4 weeks. I was at Target, and I was buying Christmas gifts for our niece's twins, and I thought, oh my gosh. At the checkout stand, I thought, boy, this cost me a lot more than I thought. Well, when I got home, they charged me $20 a piece for a little 6-year-old sweater. I'm taking that stuff back.
Yeah.
But also I noticed at Walmart and Target, they're taking the prices off, so you don't know what you're buying unless it's right there. So the prices aren't even on the clothes. So I've been really complaining about that.
Yeah.
They're already doing it.
Well, I wouldn't put it past them that that's intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're when you're at the checkout stand and you've got a line way down here, you're gonna say, now wait a minute, that's not what I thought I was buying.
Right.
I mean, some people do that, but I didn't. When I got home that I realized that that's what I spent. So like I said, I'm taking them back.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, I went into Vaughn's and
you told
the
me
card.
on the radio.
Yeah, the card that I'm supposed to use, they just have you put your phone number in now. And the guy was like, well, it'd be really convenient for you because see what'll happen is we'll start knowing what you buy and we'll be able to send you coupons so that you can get good pricing on these things. And I said, I don't think I want you to know that much about me.
You're right. Totally. And and I read the articles today on some of these websites, and people were, they were doing it tongue in cheek. Well, what do you got to hide? It's not. I don't have anything to hide. I just don't want you knowing that I'm buying whatever. It doesn't matter what I'm buying. I'm not buying illegal. It's not like I'm buying heroin at Walmart. But I don't want you to know even how many eggs I consume. It's none of your business how many eggs I consume. It's none of your business how much meat I eat. Because that's a big problem. They don't want you eating a lot of meat. I don't want them knowing that. It's none of their business. None of their business. Where am I at?
Kroger is here.
Where are they at, Eric?
Food for Less and Foods Co. or Kroger.
That's Kroger?
Yes.
No more ice cream for Terry? See, we know too much. He's eating ice cream. He's eating ice cream. Bonds already knows he's eats ice cream. Probably even knows what flavor it is.
Hi, Pastor Brandon.
Hey,
I have
man.
this question for you. It's about the digital tracking.
Yeah.
So is it just like when the phones, when we're talking about a certain topic, it starts giving you ads like, oh, I want to go skiing,
Yeah.
for example, and it shows up like skiing gear, stuff you could buy. That's what we're all curious about.
Yes. Okay, so that's part of it. That, you know, in some of the articles I read is that the store, like if you're going to Target, it figures out your buying habits, and then it's going to pop up these ads and like coupons, like Terry was saying, and to entice you to buy more. Okay, whatever. They're doing that now. This thing goes one step further and says, you like to buy eggs, okay? But the algorithm and the AI is telling me that you make X amount of money. And based on our calculations, you can afford eggs at this price. That's where this is going. What these articles are trying to say is the danger in that is that they're going to set individual prices for everybody in this room will be at a different price. And look, dude, when they throw in there, it's not just economics, but your social standing, like what you're like. One of the articles was saying that they're going to go and the AI will sweep through your social media. They'll see what you're putting on Instagram, Facebook, all your social media, what you're against, who you voted for, okay, and then that's going to be calculated into the algorithm equation. Oh, you voted for Trump. You're one of the Trump people. Okay. Maybe eggs will be $8 for you or something like. See, it's like China. You start getting a social credit score in all of this, and then they start charging you more. Oh, man, it's off the chain at that point. And especially if they want to kill the Second Amendment. I was thinking about that today. If they wanted to kill the Second Amendment, we're just not going to take the Second Amendment. We're just going to make it so outrageously priced that you can't afford to do it. You can't afford to buy ammo. You can't afford to buy a gun or whatever the issue is. Or let's say we get into another pandemic, okay, and you want to buy hydroxychloroquine or you want to buy ivermectin, and now it's all digital. How are you going to buy it? Because they're going to say, you can't buy it. Not with a digital currency, you can't. Because that's programmable, and we don't allow you to buy that. And so this dovetails not only into price gouging, but also forbidding you to buy certain things. Like if they tell Terry, hey, you're driving too much, you can't buy any gas. Or but gas for you is going to be a little bit higher because we notice that you drive too much. So we're just going to bump up that price for you a little bit more. And now it's $6 a gallon instead of $5 or whatever. And maybe that will curtail Terry's driving habits or something like that. It's like, what? Where is that fair? Oh, wait a second. You're thinking in your terms. You're not thinking in their terms. They think that's fair. That's not fair. To me, that seems like a form of communism.
Who's they and how do we take them out?
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Who's they and how they take them out? Okay, so what I can understand with the companies these like Kroger are partnering with is tech firms. This is coming from technocracy. That's why I accessed Patrick Wood because he's the expert on technocracy. We had him here last spring. Okay. So what's happening is they're partnering with Silicon Valley. And they're making deals with them. And look, I don't trust Silicon Valley as far as I can throw them. These tech people, And none of them reference like Sam Altman or Elon Musk or anything like that, but they are using tech firms to do this. And these tech firms, dude, have the same mentality of technocracy. They remember we studied this, and what did they want to do? They wanted to accelerate technology to break the system. And they don't like the system that we're in anyway right now. They don't like free marketism. They don't like it. They want to break the system because in the technocrats' mind, they really believe they're God, and they're making the rules for us, and they believe that this is what's fair for people. Now, from a Kroger standpoint, or a Vons, or a Walmart, or a Target, if you're the CEO and the tech company is coming to you saying, we can make you 20% more profit by using AI, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to sell out the customer. They don't care about the customer. They care about the profit. And if you're telling them the tech guys can do this with facial recognition, up the price, and get this going, and we can make a 20% more profit than we're making now, we're all in. We're all in. I can totally see it. And look, this is not free marketism. This is controlling prices, forcing people to do certain things, to buy at certain rates. Oh man, this is a prison. This is a prison, man. It's horrible. So anyway, I hated to burst your bubble about what the grocery stores are doing, but I think it's only fair that you know this, and that you need to pay attention to what's happening here. I got one more question, then we got to get out of here, because I ran across this and I'm like, okay, that freaked me out. And then I'm thinking prophetically of like, I see where this is going. A quart of wheat for a day's wages. You're going to make everyone poor. On top of all the junk, other stuff that you're doing to make us all poor. This is just one thing. Do you guys, I want to say to any of these people in control, do you guys do anything that benefits humanity? No, of course not. You don't do anything that benefits humanity. You just destroy us. You want us all dead. That's right. I forgot about that. They want us all dead. That's right. Okay. We had one more question. Are we good? Or over here. Yeah, there we go.
It's more of a comment, kind of a question to everybody.
Yeah.
As far as I know, I haven't been abducted and implanted with a chip. But the gentleman over here that was talking about, we just talk about something and our phones will give us ads.
Yeah.
I have had more than enough experiences that it's more than coincidence that I think of things.
That's
and
weird.
My phone will give me
Okay,
something.
yes. That's weird. And I've talked to other people that have said the same thing, that, oh, that was weird. I was just thinking that, and it pops up. I don't know how to explain that, man. That other than there might be some supernatural element. Here's the thing. In my research of AI, and I've said this before, there's a black box element to it. And the black box means there's stuff that thing's doing that the developers have no idea why it's doing what it's doing. Why does it lie? Why is it always anti-God? They have no idea. But here's the thing. I know, just knowing case studies of exorcists, deliverances, demonology, fallen angels, their activities. They have no problem messing with electronics. None whatsoever. In fact, they mess with it all the time. They can make things go off in your house that you never turned on. That's paranormal activity. So when you put it all together, what you're just saying is, I think there's a spiritual element behind it. And I'm not crazy, but how in the world? You're not the only person that's ever told me that. And then so at that point now, we went into, and we've crossed into the spiritual realm at that point now. Something's going on here. And the fact that AI continues to show this supernatural element inside of it tells me that I think the demons and fallen angels are harnessing its power and manipulating people through it. I think, honestly, if you don't use AI correctly, it can become a digital Ouija board. You start having a conversation with AI like it's your buddy, that thing takes off and starts manipulating your mind. And I think there's demonic activity behind that. So you're on to something, and I think there's a spiritual component to it. And I would not discount. Dude, you talk to Alfonso and Bruce and anyone that runs our electronics. Or anybody. There's things that we come here on Sunday, everything worked great on Saturday, whatever. Nothing works. And then you know what happens? We can't figure it out. I can't figure it out. My computer doesn't work. It worked last night. And you know what happens? Lord, intervene and make this thing work. Starts working. So what does that tell me? So if I pray and then the electronics work, that tells me there was a spiritual problem going on. That the demonic was making something happen. And it happens a lot, quite frequently. And you pray and it stops. Well, that's odd. It's not like I hit a switch. I prayed. It's a spiritual issue sometimes. And I would tell you this. Spiritual, they mess with electronics. I remember after I dealt with somebody that was demon possessed, I think the demons followed me home, and my kids were real small, and that's when they had all these electronic toys. And I went into one of their rooms, and the electronic toys were going off like all over the place, 2, 3 in the morning. Electronics were going off. These toys, and the switch was not turned on, and they were going off. So what did I do? Pray, stops. How can I pray and it stops the electronics and no one even turned them on? I'm just telling you. So there's always a spiritual component. And look, with how evil that is, you don't think that the Satan and the spirit of Antichrist is working through all this to control people? Forget it. That's game over. Anyway, we got to get out of here, man. Let's pray and we'll get you. Oh, Ron, what do we got to do before you? We got to set up for something beautiful. So we got to get small tables and the big round tables in. Okay, if you can stay back and help us, that'd be great. Let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for all that you've taught us in your word about the poverty of the Messiah coming in the first coming. Amazing how he came like that and took that humility on, and especially in this Christmas season as we recognize that. We thank you for it, and we thank you for him. We thank you, Father, that you have an ultimate plan, that this evil that we see all around us, that one day you're going to redeem what the locusts have eaten. You're going to set things right. You're going to make everything perfect when you come. And we look forward to that because, man, we are vexed looking at the junk around us, the evil around us, and the stealing around us, Father. So thank God we have a future in you. Bless us now as we go. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. You could help us out. That would be great.